Every morning, every evening, ain't we got fun?
Karl Marx once said, "The history of all previous societies has been the history of class struggles," which directly translates to rich people be whack. And the most famous literary example of rich people being whack is the novel The Great Gatsby, whose narrator is Nick Carraway, a young man from Minnesota who prides himself on being understanding and tolerant of other people with his Midwestern values, and moves to New York's West Egg, where all the people who got rich recently live. Not to be confused with New York's East Egg, where the people who have been rich for generations live, and think the people who live in West Egg are low class because they aren't as refined and don't have the same social abilities that come with generational wealth. Speaking of wealth, do you know what Nick isn't tolerant and sympathetic to? Rich people who use their wealth to avoid the consequences of their actions, because although he describes himself as non-judgmental, Nick's tolerance does have limits. This is why he left New York after living there for a certain period of time. He couldn't stand the vapid, morally gray at best lifestyle and people, except for one man, Jay Gatsby. But how did this happen? Well, as previously stated, he moved to New York, specifically for learning the bond business. No, not that bond, the other one. Shortly after he arrived, he was invited along with pro golfer Jordan Baker to a dinner party by his cousin Daisy, who just so happens to live nearby, and her husband Tom, who Nick was in college with. Tom decides to turn this dinner party into awkward Thanksgiving at your uncle's, and goes on a racist rant, while Daisy expresses how she hopes her daughter isn't smart, so she doesn't have to deal with the soul-crushing realization that 1920s society undermines the intelligence of women. Then Tom gets a call from a woman he definitely isn't having an affair with, and Jordan is like, "Oh, yeah, I need to wake up early for my epic golf tournament tomorrow, so..." And as Nick returns home, he sees that Gatsby fellow looking over a green light across the river from his dock, and he's left wondering why he's just standing there. Later on, Nick gets invited to a party at Tom's affair apartment, where God is watching over the waste of our sin, near a very nice couple named George and Myrtle. I sure hope there isn't an affair happening there. At the affair apartment party, Nick hears more rumors about this Gatsby dude and how he may or may not have been a German spy, or the nephew of some important German guy, or something else to do with Germany. A lot of these rumors have to do with Germany, but that doesn't matter, because Nick is too busy being both intrigued and repulsed by rich people and giving inspiration to the song Shots by Lil Jon. After coming home more wasted than Ryan Reynolds' acting talent in Green Lantern, Nick gets a mysterious invitation to one of Green Light fans aka Gatsby's parties, where people party super hard and marvel at the mysterious rich man and ogle at how rich he is while they get funky on his dollar, and also read his books that are in fact real. Nick, after realizing that he was the only one to receive an invitation and the rest of the partygoers just kinda showed up, then talks to a man he finds out was also a soldier in that massive war that just happened, and also calls everybody old sport, and also is Gatsby. However, Gatsby doesn't drink and instead prefers to mysteriously watch his guests have fun while he takes mysterious phone calls and pulls Jordan Baker aside to have mysterious conversations. After the party, Nick and Gatsby become friends and have very personal conversations in a car. "So, Gatsby, where are you from?" "The Midwest." "Where in the San Francisco." Also, could you please arrange a meeting between Daisy and I? She's the woman I love, and we were in a relationship, but I went off to war, and she married that Tom guy, because he was richer than me, because this was before I mysteriously acquired my wealth, Gatsby said to Nick. But did I say Gatsby said this? I actually mean Jordan Baker relayed this information later on in the day to Nick under Gatsby's request, because Gatsby was worried about Nick being mean about it, because Gatsby has anxiety, which makes him #relatable. Nick then agrees to reintroduce the two, which leads to a very awkward meeting where he tries to get Gatsby to not abandon ship. And after reintroducing the two lovebirds, covering for their affair, which is totally what someone with true Midwestern values would do, and realizing that the green light Gatsby has been looking out at each night was at Daisy's house, Nick goes a couple weeks without seeing either of them. That is until he shows up one day at Gatsby's house and sees Tom, who definitely doesn't like Daisy spending a lot of time alone at Gatsby's, but also doesn't know that there's an affair happening yet somehow. Despite Tom not figuring out Daisy was cheating on him, which was probably super duper obvious, Tom did do some actual investigation, like Ryan Reynolds when he played that talking dog that solves mysteries and also talks, and found out that Gatsby probably does a lot of bootlegging. In fact, definitely a lot of bootlegging, and that's why he's more loaded than this glass of beer. Then Gatsby has another party, which turns out to be a major bummer, as no one has a good time, including Daisy, so Gatsby stops having these parties, because you see, the entire reason why he was throwing these parties in the first place is because he hoped Daisy would one day wander in, and they could reunite, so when she isn't happy, Gatsby just stops them altogether. But other people do in fact have parties, like the Buchanans, who host a party with Nick, Gatsby, and that golfer lady Jordan Baker that also cheated in golf that Nick is now dating, but kind of begrudgingly because she is selfish and dishonest, like that one time she cheated in golf. This is in contrast to Nick, who is definitely honest all the time because he literally says this, and people who say they are honest are definitely honest all the time. Tom, itching for a confrontation because he is now pretty sure Gatsby is having an affair with his wife because they looked at each other in a loving way, aggressively hops on Daisy's suggestion that they go into the city where he and Gatsby have a big screaming match where Tom comes out on top because Gatsby broke the law to earn his money while Tom's ancestors probably just did the same thing and passed the money down to him. Daisy then stays with Tom because Tom has better rich person clout despite being a rampant abuser, and also because Gatsby sorta kinda had a fit of rage during the entire confrontation with Tom. On their way home in their two-car caravan with Daisy and Gatsby being alone in Tom's car. Okay, editor's note, not sure why Tom decided that having his wife share his car with the man she was having an affair with was a good idea. Maybe it was some weird masculine power thing I'm too soft and emotionally secure to understand. Something like, oh, I'm gonna make you be together because I know you can't do anything about it because I'm married to the love of your life, Gatsby, lol. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on this one. Daisy straight up runs over Myrtle and doesn't care and just kinda keeps going. Gatsby agrees to take the blame for the accident when Nick finds him again in some bushes. Nick is like, dude, you need to move on and stuff, which sparks a long conversation where Gatsby reveals his entire history. You see, Gatsby was originally born James Gatz, and after Gatsby left college because he hated the janitorial work he did to pay for his tuition, he had a chance meeting with sailor Dan Cody, where Gatsby informed him of an incoming storm. Afterwards, Cody then took on the young Gatsby and gave him the name J. Gatsby and then introduced him to luxury and wealthy society. But then, Dan Cody died and left Gatsby with $25,000, which Gatsby was cheated out of by Cody's family. And after being left with a taste for wealth but no money left, Gatsby pushed forward to achieve a wealth of his own and reunite with Daisy. After word vomiting his entire life story, Gatsby decides to take a swim in the pool when it should be closed because it's fall, and tries to get Nick to join him. Nick, however, has to go do boring stuff, like work, so he makes like Autumn and leaves. Meanwhile, Wilson is very sad that his wife is dead and looks up on the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. Oh my god! God wants me to kill Gatsby because he was the one who killed my wife and also was the one she cheated on me with according to Tom, who is the actual dude my wife was seeing, but I don't know that for both literal and thematic reasons. And also, TJ's eyes are God's eyes, and that's how I know this is what he wants. Wilson, in his grief-stricken mind, then finds and kills Gatsby while Gatsby is literally just vibing, and then kills himself. After no one else shows up for Gatsby's funeral aside from a few other people, and Daisy and Tom decide to move and take their dysfunctional marriage elsewhere, Nick decides to leave because both eggs are full of horrible people and move back to Minnesota because it's so cold it keeps the bad people out. But why is that? What separates the people in Minnesota from those in the eggs in Nick's mind? Well, most people in the Midwest don't typically desire to make a bazillion monies really quickly and step on other people to do so, and desire is what is at the core of Gatsby's character, because Gatsby is a character about out-of-reach desires which we believe will fill a hole within ourselves. The first time Nick sees Gatsby is when he is longing for Daisy and the green light at her dock. The entire reason why he hosts his parties is for her. She's why he moved to the eggs. She's why he wanted to get rich in the first place. But does Gatsby truly love Daisy, or does he love the idea of her? I mean, an argument could be made that it's probably a mixture of both, but it's clear that Gatsby is holding her up on a pedestal, because to him, she embodies the privilege and wealth he has worked so hard to achieve with his less than legal means, while she was simply born into it. However, Gatsby's arguably / somewhat noble at heart desires blind him from the reality that prevents this dream from ever coming to fruition. No matter how much Daisy loves him, she would never leave Tom for Gatsby because Tom has a higher social standing because he was born into wealth. This isn't just Gatsby's inability to recognize an unrealistic dream of the future, as Gatsby is trying desperately to recreate the past he and Daisy shared before he went off to war. Even outside of Daisy, we see him trying to recreate his history by lying about certain aspects of it, like where he was born, which exposes the fact that he doesn't know that San Francisco is not in the Midwest. Probably should have stayed in college for that one. His desire to live in the past is symbolically what gets him killed. When he goes swimming in that pool in fall when it's time for it to be closed as the seasons change, you're thinking, Gatsby, my man, the leaves have fallen off the trees. It's time to move on, dude. It's fall. And then he gets shot by Wilson. He probably wouldn't have died if he stayed inside, or at the very least Wilson would have had to have tried much harder. The desire Gatsby has is what separates him from the other wealthy people in Nick's eyes. While the wealthy from both East Egg and West Egg are vapid and selfish horrible people, pursuing money for opulence and power, Gatsby, however misguided through his own warped perception of the world, was pursuing wealth for the sake of happiness and his own lovesick dream. But what else was F. Scott Fitzgerald, author of this book, saying when it came to dreams? Well, Gatsby's unrealistic dream mirrors the slowly deteriorating American dream and its hypocrisy, because it's a metaphor. But what is the American dream? Well, it's typically thought of as an idea that anyone in America can make it big and have all the success in the world, regardless of social class or circumstances of birth. However, one can only look at our history and realize that this is pretty much a bold-faced lie for enough reasons that it could form a greatest hits album of disappointment and discrimination. But what about Gatsby? I mean, he got his money through shady means, sure, but he made it to glorious success, right? The picturesque American dream starting from nothing and reaching the top. But like the other inhabitants of West Egg, he made his money recently, which the inhabitants of East Egg looked down upon. So even with all his money, which is likely more than what many of the East Eggers have, he still is, and forever will be, a lower social class than them. As such, the image of Gatsby looking out onto the green light at Daisy's house speaks not only of a hopeless romantic at heart, it paints us a picture of hypocrisy and shallowness of the American dream, because had the American dream hold true, there wouldn't be the stark difference between West Egg and East Egg, and if Gatsby, a white male in the 1920s who is the personification of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and becoming rich, can't achieve the true American dream, then who can? Now, remember when I brought up that Karl Marx quote? And do you remember that part where Nick says he detests rich people that use their money to avoid the consequences of their actions? Well, Daisy running over Myrtle with a car and not taking any responsibility for it, which is the quintessential and perfect textbook definition of a bra moment and of rich people being whack. Gatsby, out of the goodness of his heart, takes the fall for this, leading to Wilson committing that murder-suicide at the end of the book. But why are the Buchanans alive and the Wilsons or Gatsby are dead because of their horrible deeds? Well, I mean, the Buchanans were a higher social class. You would have known this if you paid attention. What I'm telling you guys is very important. I wish you'd listen. And who bears witness to these events? A billboard. Literally, a billboard with two giant eyes belonging to Dr. T.J. Eckelberg in the Valley of Ashes. Well, the Valley of Ashes, full of industrial waste, and as the name subtly hints at, ashes, is a clear symbol of economic disparity. Eckelberg's eyes are a little less concrete. I've joked about them being the eyes of God, but that meaning was only truly believed in Wilson's grief-stricken mind. However, the real meaning, which is rather underwhelming, is that the billboard's meaning is left up to the interpretation of the characters, which sounds like a total cop-out, but the lack of definitive meaning means the eyes represent meaninglessness. Meaningless signs of love, of dreams, of displays of wealth, showing how empty it is in the end. And also showing how dumb it is to make middle schoolers read complicated novels and getting them to articulate how important the color of the freaking window drapes are because rich people be whack. Ah!
Ain't we got fun? Not much money, oh, but honey, ain't we got fun? The rent's unpaid, dear, we haven't a fuss, but smiles were made, dear, for people like us. In the winter, in the summer, don't we have fun? Times are bum and getting bummer, still we have fun. There's nothing surer, the rich get rich and the poor get children. In the meantime, in between time,